A 12-year-old girl accidentally bumped the woman next to her on a plane and got slapped across the face. What happened next left the entire cabin stunned. The gate agent smiled as she scanned the boarding pass. "You all set, sweetheart." 12-year-old Amira Lockhart nodded, gripping the strap of her glittery backpack just a little tighter. "Yes, ma'am." She walked down the jet bridge with her heart beating fast, not from fear, but from the weird buzz of doing something big, grown up big. This was her first time flying alone. Her mom had walked her right up to the gate in Detroit, hugged her tight, and whispered a reminder, "You're brave, you're smart, and you know how to handle yourself." That sentence echoed in Amira's mind as she stepped onto the plane. She found her seat 21. The dreaded middle and tucked her backpack under the seat in front of her. To her left sat a teenage boy with earbuds and head down. On her right by the window, an older white woman stared out with her arms folded across her chest tight, like she'd already decided she didn't want to be here. "Excuse me," Amira said politely, trying to slide, and the woman didn't move, not even a glance. Amira paused for a second, then said it again slightly louder. Still nothing. Eventually the teen in the aisle seat stood, letting Amira squeeze in. Her small frame barely took up the space, but she kept her hands to herself, trying to be extra careful not to touch the woman beside her. Her mama always told her some people look at you and see what they want to see, not who you are. That's their burden, not yours. Still be wise. As the plane began taxiing, Amira fished out her tablet and plugged in her pink headphones. The cartoon she picked made her smile, something goofy and light, a buffer from missing her grandparents. Already she didn't notice the woman's constant side glances, didn't see her sigh dramatically every time Amira shifted. The woman, Judith Hensley, 68, retired, bitter and rigid in her views, had made up her mind the second the child sat down. She didn't want to share her row with her. Turbulence hit about 10 minutes after takeoff. Just as the flight attendants began rolling their drink carts, Amira paused her movie and pulled out a small ginger ale can her grandmother had packed. Her hand moved quickly, reaching down to grab it, and that's when her elbow gently brushed Judith's forearm. It wasn't hard, it wasn't careless, it was a normal thing to happen on a crowded plane, but for Judith it was the trigger. She snapped her head toward Amira with venom in her eyes. "Watch where you're going," she hissed, her voice sharp enough to make the teen boy flinch. Amira blinked, startled. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to," but Judith was already shifting in her seat, breathing heavily. "You people never know how to act in public." Amira froze, her mouth went dry. "What?" Judith leaned in close and said it louder, each word pressed between clenched teeth. "Your kind always makes things difficult." That's when Amira's hands trembled. She sat still, looking around, confused, searching the faces around her. Were people hearing this? Then came the slap, sharp, sudden, across the face, not hard enough to cause bleeding, but enough to snap her head to the side and bring instant tears to her eyes. The entire row gasped. The man across the aisle dropped his magazine. A woman behind them audibly said, "Oh my God," but nobody moved, not yet. Amira sat still. She didn't cry. Her hand moved to her cheek slowly. She was frozen in her seat, processing what had just happened. Her skin burned, but more than that, her chest tightened with embarrassment, confusion. Why? Judith sat back like nothing had happened. "Maybe now you'll learn how to keep your hands to yourself." But then a seat belt clicked open behind them, and a man stood up, calm, steady, and very, very clear on what he needed to say. "Ma'am," the voice came low but firm, "you just assaulted a child." The speaker was tall, brown skin, built like someone who spent long hours at a desk, but still found time for the gym. He wore a light gray hoodie, dark jeans, and glasses that slipped slightly down his nose as he stepped into the row behind a mirror. Derek Vaughn had been half asleep, drifting in and out as the plane climbed to cruising altitude. He wasn't even fully sure what had woken him, maybe the sudden sharpness in the air, or maybe the unmistakable sound of a hand meeting skin. Judith turned her head toward him slowly, her face twisted with the smug confidence of someone who'd never once faced real consequences. "This doesn't concern you," she said, waving him off. Derek tilted his head. "Oh, it does now." He pointed toward Amira, whose small hand still rested against her cheek. "You laid hands on a child on a plane with witnesses." Judith rolled her eyes. "She was being rude. She elbowed me. These kids don't know how to respect adults anymore." Derek glanced at Amira, then back to Judith. "You don't get to strike a kid because you feel disrespected. You don't get to make it about race either." That last part hit. Passengers began murmuring. One woman pulled out her phone and started recording. Another leaned across the aisle and whispered to the flight attendant. The cabin, once silent, started shifting like something waking up. Judith crossed her arms. "I don't care what you think. She touched me first. You're a grown woman." Derek replied calmly, "If a child bumps you on a plane, you deal with it. You don't hit her. You don't insult her. You definitely don't make it about who she is." "I didn't make it about race. You said you're kind." "We all heard it." From behind, a voice added, "I heard it too." Then another. "She slapped that girl." "Man, that's assault." Now Judith looked nervous. The Attention was turning fast. The teenage boy beside Amira took out one earbud. She didn't do anything wrong, he said quietly. The lady freaked out. The flight attendant arrived, a short woman in her 30s with a neat ponytail and the no-nonsense face of someone used to handling mid-air drama. What's going on here? She asked. Derek stepped aside. This woman slapped the girl sitting next to her. She also made racist remarks. The attendant crouched slightly to Amira's eye-level. Sweetheart, are you okay? Amira nodded, but her voice came out thin. She got mad when I bumped her by accident. The attendant stood straight and turned to Judith. Ma'am, I'm going to ask you to come with me to the galley. Judith protested. I'm not the one who should be moved, ma'am. The attendant repeated, firmer now. Stand up. You are being reassigned to a different seat. This is not up for discussion. Judith glanced around the cabin. She must have realized there were phones out now. Eyes locked on her, she stood muttering something under her breath and grabbed her bag as she shuffled past Derek. He didn't move an inch. He just watched her with the same calm stare. When she was gone, the flight attendant returned and leaned in toward Derek. Sir, thank you. We've documented the incident. She'll be met by security upon landing. Derek nodded, then looked at Amira. Mind if I sit here for a bit? Amira glanced at the teen boy. He stood up instantly, almost relieved to get out of the tension zone. Derek eased into the seat and turned toward Amira, his tone shifting softer. You all right? She took a moment, then gave a small shrug. I guess you don't got to be all right. That was a lot, but you handled yourself. I saw that. She blinked fast, swallowing. She said stuff I didn't understand why she was so mean. Derek gave a soft chuckle. That's because it wasn't about you. People like her, they carry hate around like a purse. Doesn't matter who you are, if you don't fit what they expect, they go off. Amira looked at him, her voice almost a whisper. Did I do something wrong? He leaned in. Not even close. You were just being a kid flying alone. That takes guts. But Amira hadn't said everything yet, and Derek knew enough to stay, listen, and give her space to find her voice. Derek settled into the seat beside Amira, folding his hands over his knees like he had all the time in the world. He didn't speak right away. He didn't try to fix it. He just let her breathe around them. The cabin slowly returned to a low murmur, though glances still drifted toward their row. The flight attendants kept moving quietly, checking passengers, pretending to restore normality, but something had shifted, and it wasn't going back. Amira fiddled with the tab on her ginger ale can, not drinking it. Her shoulders still looked tight, as if part of her hadn't caught up to what just happened. She finally asked, why would someone do that to a kid? I didn't even do anything. Derek let out a quiet breath. Some people walk around with their hearts locked up. They see someone different, someone young, someone they don't understand, and instead of learning something they get scared, and scared people act mean. But I didn't scare her, I know, but that's not the part that matters to people like her. Amira's voice got smaller. My mom told me I'd be okay. She said I'd be fine by myself. She was right. Derek said she trusted you because she knew you could handle this. And look, you did. You didn't panic, you didn't shout, you didn't even cry. Amira gave a little smirk. I wanted to. You smiled. Crying doesn't make you weak, but holding your head up after something like that's strength. There was a pause. Amira finally took a sip from her can. Derek leaned back, just a little, resting his shoulder near hers, not crowding, just present. You know what my daughter would have done? He asked. Amira glanced up. You have a daughter? Yeah, she's 10. She would have punched that lady in the knee. Amira laughed, the sound sharp and honest, like she didn't expect it to come out. Is she like me? Very much, except louder. That got another smile out of her. From a few rows up, a woman with salt and pepper curls turned in her seat and gave Amira a quiet thumbs up. A man across the aisle leaned over. Hey, he said to Derek, if y'all need anything, I got snacks, gummy bears, almonds, peanut M&Ms. Don't tell Tear. Derek grinned. Appreciate it. Then the teenage boy returned, hovering awkwardly. You want your seat back? Derek asked him. He shook his head. No, it's cool. I'm gonna go stretch my legs. As he disappeared down the aisle, Derek turned back to Amira. So tell me about your grandparents. I'm guessing they spoiled you rotten. She beamed. Grandma made peach cobbler twice. I told her I didn't want the crust too thick, and she made a whole new one the next day. That's love right there. Grandpa let me drive his lawn mower. He calls it his freedom machine. He said he doesn't care what gas costs. He'd rather mow than talk to people. Derek chuckled. Sounds like a man with a plan. For a while they just talked about her trip, about the movie she had started before it all happened, about the upcoming school year, and how Amira hated PE because she always forgot her gym shoes. It was easy, natural, and slowly Amira's shoulders dropped. Her voice got a little louder. Her laugh came more freely. Eventually she paused. You think they'll arrest her? They might, or they'll at least put her on a no-fly list. What matters is you spoke up without even saying a word. I didn't really do anything. You existed. That was enough to shake her, and when people saw that happen to you, it made them realize they couldn't stay quiet. Amira looked out the window. Clouds rolled beneath them like slow waves. She probably thinks she won. No, Derek said, not today. But the flight wasn't over yet, and Derek had one more job to do before they landed. Make sure Amira knew this moment didn't define her. In the cramped galley near the back of the plane, Judith Hensley sat on the folding jump seat, arms crossed, lips pursed into a bitter line. The senior flight attendant, a tall man with Years of turbulence behind him stood just far enough not to get pulled into her mood. I don't see why I'm being treated like a criminal. Judith snapped, eyes darting toward the rear bathroom like she might make a break for it. Ma'am, the attendant said, calm and practiced. You struck a minor and made discriminatory remarks. Multiple passengers reported the incident. You were lucky this flight isn't turning around. I was provoked. That girl, she was. He raised a hand. No more, please. We've documented everything. You'll be met by security when we land in Birmingham. Judith blinked. Birmingham? I thought this flight went straight to Atlanta. We're being diverted, he replied. Captain made the call 10 minutes ago. Her face dropped. You're joking. He wasn't. And as her cheeks turned pale, the fight drained out of her. Judith sat in silence, the low whine of the engines the only sound in the galley. Now back in row 21, Amira glanced toward the rear of the cabin but couldn't see past the drink cart. Did they move her far? She asked. Far enough, Derek replied. She won't bother you again. Is the plane really going to stop somewhere else? Looks like it, probably to make sure things are handled before we get to Atlanta. Amira leaned back in her seat, not quite relaxed, but no longer shrinking. I hope they tell her she can't fly anymore. They just might, Derek said. But what matters more is that you're safe, and you spoke up even without yelling. Amira paused. But I didn't say anything. You didn't have to. Sometimes silence makes the loudest noise. She thought about that. Then she asked, is it always like this? Derek shifted, understanding her question. Didn't need explaining. Sometimes, he said honestly. Sometimes it's worse, sometimes it's subtle, but there are also moments like this where someone decides enough is enough. A woman in the row across tapped Derek lightly on the shoulder. I just want to say thank you, she said. You did what a lot of people wouldn't. He nodded, appreciate it. Then she looked at Amira. You were really brave, sweetie. Amira gave a small smile. Thank you. From the front of the plane, the captain's voice crackled over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, due to an onboard incident, we are making an unscheduled landing in Birmingham, Alabama. Local authorities will assist us briefly on the ground. Before we continue to Atlanta, we appreciate your cooperation and understanding. The announcement was met with whispers. A few passengers peeked toward the back. The energy was still charged, but calmer now, like people were waiting to exhale. Amira turned to Derek. Will I have to talk to the police? Maybe, but don't worry, they'll just ask what happened. Tell the truth like you always do. She nodded, trying to swallow the nerves creeping in again. Will you stay with me? He didn't hesitate. Every step the plane began descending. Soon after, the clouds outside turned gray, and the seatbelt signs flicked on. A quiet landed over the cabin, one not of fear, but of anticipation, as if everyone sensed this moment had turned into something bigger than just a flight. When the wheels touched down, the cabin let out a collective breath. A few people clapped softly, more out of habit than celebration. As they taxied toward the terminal, Amira looked out the window and spotted a police cruiser parked on the tarmac, lights off, but waiting. She didn't flinch. Instead, she took one more sip of her ginger ale, handed the can to Derek, and said, guess we're not in Atlanta yet. He smiled. Not yet, but we're getting there. But what happened after they stepped off the plane? How Amira carried herself and who stood beside her would matter just as much as everything that happened at 30,000 feet inside the terminal at Birmingham Shuttlesworth Airport. A uniformed officer gently guided Amira and Derek to a quiet waiting area. A near gate, C8. The room was simple: white walls, plastic chairs, vending machines humming softly in the corner. But for Amira, it felt like stepping into a spotlight. The Officer Rayburn, crouched beside her like a dad talking to his own kid. You don't have to say anything you're not comfortable with, he told her. We're just making sure you're okay. That's all that matters right now. Amira nodded. Her hands were cold, even though the air conditioning wasn't strong. Derek sat beside her, arms on his knees, calm and solid like always. She didn't even say sorry, Amira said quietly. Officer Rayburn blinked. People like that usually don't. I didn't mean to bump her. You don't need to justify anything. Derek cut in gently. She hit you. She said things no grown adult should ever say to a child. What happened wasn't your fault. Raven glanced between them, then stood. We've taken statements from the crew and a few passengers. She's being questioned right now in another room. Most likely she'll be facing charges. Amira looked up. Like jail maybe, or banned from flying. Either way, she won't be on another plane with a kid anytime soon. As the officer walked away to speak with the other staff, Amira finally leaned back. Her body looked tired, not just from the day, but from the weight of it all catching up. Can I ask you something? She said to Derek. Of course. Why did you help me? He didn't smile, didn't joke, because nobody else did. But why? He took a second before answering. Because when I was about your age, something similar happened to me. I was in a grocery store with my mom. A man shoved her cart, told her she didn't belong there, said she was dirty. Nobody said a word. People saw it, heard it, and they looked away. Amira's eyes stayed on him. I promised myself I'd never be the person who looked away again, Derek said. Amira didn't reply right away. She stared at her sneakers, then finally asked, do you think people like her ever change? He scratched the side of his neck. Sometimes, if they want to, but that's not our job to fix them. But what is our job? Derek looked at her, his tone softer now. To protect T. Problem the other helps the person doing the hurting. She nodded slowly like she was saving those words somewhere deep from down the hall. The gate agent approached, speaking into a walkie. They're ready to board. Should be a short flight. Now 45 minutes tops. Derek stood and stretched. You want me to sit with you again? Amira hesitated. Then she nodded. Yeah, if you don't mind. Not at all. As they boarded, more passengers gave small gestures of support, gentle smiles, nods of recognition, kind eyes that didn't need to say much. Back in the same row, Derek took the aisle. This time Amira settled into the middle seat. The teen boy returned to the window, but leaned in with a quiet, "Hey, you good now?" She nodded. "Yeah, thanks." During takeoff, Amira didn't reach for her tablet this time. Instead, she leaned her head slightly toward Derek's shoulder. He didn't move. He let her rest. They didn't speak much on that second flight. There wasn't much left to say, but something about the silence felt right now not heavy, just peaceful. About 30 minutes in, Amira finally said, "I'm going to tell my mom everything. She'll be proud. She's going to be mad, sure, but proud too." But before the wheels touched down in Atlanta, one final moment, something small but powerful, would give Amira the kind of strength you carry with you for life. The wheels hit the tarmac. With a soft thump, the familiar jolt brought Amira out of her thoughts. She blinked, stretched her legs, and looked around, still beside Derek, still surrounded by quiet support. Outside the window, dusk was settling over Hartfield Jackson. The sky held that golden peach-toned glow that made everything look warmer than it really was. The captain's voice came over the speaker, calm and even. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Atlanta. Please remain seated while local law enforcement completes a passenger transfer." Before deplaning, Amira looked up. "Passenger transfer?" Derek nodded. "They're taking her off first." She leaned forward slightly, trying to catch a glimpse of Judith, but the cabin curtain was drawn, shielding the front. Still, you could feel the presence. You could feel that all eyes were waiting. It took a few minutes. Then 2 officers stepped onto the plane and quietly escorted Judith down the aisle. Her face was pale now, the confidence drained from her posture. She didn't look at anyone. No one clapped, no one jeered, but they watched. Amira didn't flinch this time. She just followed Judith with her eyes until she disappeared through the exit, and that was it. No scene, just accountability carried out quietly. The deplaning began. Passengers stood grabbing their bags, stretching their arms. The teen boy gave Amira a fist bump before walking off. "Take care." "All right, you two," she said as they waited for their row to move. Derek reached for his phone and unlocked it. "Want to give your mom a heads up that you're okay?" Amira smiled, but shook her head. "I want to tell her in person." Outside the gate, a woman in a blue windbreaker stood behind the rope barrier. Her hair was tied up in a puff, her eyes scanning every face that came off the plane. As soon as she spotted Amira, she started pushing forward. "Amira," she called out, voice trembling. "Mom." Amira dropped her bag and rushed toward her. Her mother, Renee, caught her in a hug so tight it lifted her an inch off the floor. She kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her hands. "Oh, baby, are you okay? I was losing my mind when the airline called." "I'm okay, I promise." Renee looked up. "Did someone stay with you?" Derek stepped forward, just made sure she wasn't alone. Renee looked at him, her eyes glassy. Thank you for protecting my baby. I didn't do anything special," he said. "You did exactly what needed to be done." Amira chimed in. "He didn't let her scare me." That made her mother stop. She looked at Derek again, this time softer, fuller, and nodded. "I hope more people act like you when things like this happen." He gave a small shrug. "We all can." "Doesn't take much." A representative from the airline appeared with paperwork asking Renee to speak with someone from corporate about what happened. While she walked away, Amira stood with Derek. "You think she'll really get in trouble?" "I do," he said. "But even if she didn't, what matters is she didn't get away with it in the moment." "Not this time." Amira looked down, chewing the inside of her cheek. "It still makes me feel weird, like I did something wrong even though I didn't. That's what hate does." Derek said, "It tries to stick to you even when it's not yours. The key is knowing how to brush it off and not carry it inside." She looked at him for a long time. Then she asked, "Can I remember you if something like this ever happens?" Again, he smiled. "You better." A few minutes later, Renee came back. "We're good to go, baby." She turned to Derek again. "You need a ride anywhere, dinner, something?" He shook his head. "I've got a cousin nearby. He's probably already wondering why I didn't call yet." They said their goodbyes. Amira gave him a hug, not long, not dramatic, just real. And as she walked off with her mother hand in hand, she glanced back once more. Derek lifted 2 fingers in a wave. She smiled, but Amira wasn't done with the story, not even close, because what she learned next weeks later would shift her view in a way nothing else ever had. 3 weeks later, a light drizzle tapped against the windows of Woodbrook Middle School in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, where Amira now sat. In front of her 7th grade English class, a single index card trembled slightly between her fingers, but her voice, when it finally came, did not. "My name is Amira Lockhart," she began, "and something happened to me on a plane last month that I want to talk about." Her teacher, Miss Reyes, had given the class a simple prompt for their personal narrative presentations: tell a true story about a time something changed how you see the world. Amira hadn't even raised her hand when the assignment was given, but When Friday came, she asked to go last. I was flying back from Detroit by myself. She continued, there was this woman sitting next to me. I accidentally bumped her arm. When I reached for my soda, she got mad. She said things I'd never heard someone say to me before. The class was still. Even the kids who usually whispered in the back leaned forward. Now she slapped me, Amira said in front of everyone. Someone near the front gasped. She called me names, and at first nobody did anything, but then this man stood up. He told her she couldn't treat me that way. He didn't yell, he didn't fight, he just stood up and told the truth out loud. Amira glanced down at the card, then folded it in half and set it on the desk. She didn't need it anymore. He sat next to me for the rest of the flight. He talked to me. He made me feel like I mattered, like I wasn't wrong for existing. She paused, then lifted her chin. I used to think being brave meant fighting back, but now I think being brave means not letting what someone says about you become who you think you are. Miss Rees wiped her eyes before the students even clapped. They didn't clap hard, they clapped carefully, as if they knew they were clapping for something bigger than a story. After class, one girl tapped Amira on the shoulder. My cousin went through something like that, she said. He never talked about it though. Amira nodded. Maybe one day he will. The next week the principal called her into the office, not for trouble, but to ask if she'd speak to the entire 7th grade. Word had spread, and a few days after that her mom showed her an article online. Airline passenger detained for assaulting minor mid-flight. A blurry photo showed Judith being led through the terminal in handcuffs. The article said she'd been fined, banned from flying commercial, and charged with simple battery. She didn't say sorry, Amira said, staring at the screen. She doesn't have to. Renee replied, her silence tells us exactly who she is, but your voice that tells everyone who you are. Later that night, Amira sat on her bed with a fresh journal in her lap. She wrote a single sentence on the first page. Some people try to make you small, but some people remind you you're bigger than they ever understood. She closed the book and looked out the window. Her room was quiet. Her thoughts were not. The world hadn't changed. People like Judith would still exist, but now Amira knew that she had power, not the kind you yell with, not the kind that throws fists, the kind that listens, stands, and speaks when it matters most. And sometimes all it takes is one person to remind you that your voice isn't just yours, it belongs to everyone who's still waiting to be heard. If you've ever stayed silent when you should have stood up, or if someone once made you feel small, don't carry that alone. Speak, stand.